You're watching E.T.N, where we don't do news, we just talk entertainment. Share and subscribe.
George Lucas was not happy with the direction of Star Wars at the hands of Disney, expressed his disappointment in The Force Awakens when he first screened it, and quite frankly, in my opinion, he only has himself to blame. Now look, you all heard the story yesterday with the release of Bob Iger's book. He went out and said and actually expressed how George Lucas reacted to The Force Awakens, and also explain a little bit more detail about some of the dealings with George Lucas in terms of their agreement. As we all know, in 2012, Disney bought the rights to Star Wars from George Lucas under the condition that he would give up his creative control. And with that, while they expressed interest in his ideas and even went as far as to buy 3 different drafts for the trilogy sequels, he was not happy. And Bob Iger mentioned in the book how he felt it might have been a mistake for Disney to purchase those drafts from George Lucas because of the fact that it might have given him false hope in terms of them using his ideas. They did. It was revealed also that they did use some of his ideas, although they changed it. Look, this... I don't think it's a big surprise that George Lucas didn't like what they did. He pretty much said the very thing that a lot of people criticized about the first movie, which is that it harps too much on A New Hope, taps into the nostalgia button a little bit too much. But you want to know something? Look, I can sit here and criticize Disney and Lucasfilm all day for what they've done to Star Wars this time around. But I'm not going to sit here and take sides of George Lucas either. I mean, this was his baby. This was his passion. He's the one that agreed to this. He's the one that agreed to sell it to them under the agreement that he would not have any creative control. And that to me he's just as much to blame. Now, I can criticize Disney for not at least listening to his ideas and maybe using them and utilizing them a little bit more along the lines of what he originally had envisioned rather than changing it. But in the end, both parties are to blame. You know, I know there's going to be a lot of people there are already a lot of people out there defending, oh, how could you do this to George Lucas? And, you know, he gave you ideas. Why didn't you use them? Well, you want to know something? Why did he agree to this? If you're not going to, you got to know if you're going to give up something you're passionate about, something you've worked on pretty much your whole life, and you're giving it up under the condition that you don't have any creative control, chances are they're not going to use anything that you have to say. Anything at all. And that's because people always think their ideas are better than others. So I'm not defending anybody here, and I'm certainly not going to take sides because I think there's blame to go around in terms of what Star Wars has become. Now, it hasn't all been bad. Right now they've gotten 4 movies out. They had the first, they had The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, Rogue One, and then a Solo. I say at least 2 out of those 4 were good. I liked Force Awakens, and I think Rogue One is one of the best Star Wars movies ever made. But there is a decline. There is a decline for Star Wars right now. People hated The Last Jedi. Not everybody. There obviously there's people out there who love it, but the majority of fans hated it. And not too many people are very enthusiastic about the next movie because even though they may be happy that Rian Johnson isn't there anymore, and even though some people may still have confidence in JJ, there's so much to fix that I don't think JJ Abrams is going to have the opportunity to fix everything. And sometimes when you try to do things to fix something that happened in a prior movie, it may not work out. It may make things worse. Now, there were a lot of things said, and I'll leave a link in the description pretty much you can go to any website at this point. This is the top story going around for the last 24 hours. But essentially, Bob Iger sounds like he's kind of whining at some point, not talking about him understanding, or maybe George Lucas not understanding the amount of pressure they were under, which is just crybaby tactics. I mean, of course he knows the kind of pressure you're under. He's been under this pressure many times. Now, look, taking notes from George Lucas and maybe doing everything he suggests, or at least using most of what he suggests, doesn't mean it's a formula for success. I mean, this is the man who still made the prequel trilogy. And, while I'll always appreciate what George Lucas has done for Star Wars, let's not forget some of the best Star Wars movies he didn't even direct. So I'm not saying that George Lucas had the answers to everything, but I'm pretty sure he had a little bit more knowledge as to what people might have wanted to see. He obviously had some ideas on how to fix some blemishes he made in the prequel trilogy. One of the things it mentioned was that he had written a portion of one of the outlines that kind of went into more detail explaining the whole midichlorian thing, which obviously would have been his way of attempting to fix that among fans. And, I would love to know how he felt about The Last Jedi. I mean, I can only imagine what he felt about that movie. But again, he's just as much to blame. When you have something as powerful as Star Wars, anyone and everyone would always love more Star Wars, at least at one point. He did not have to sell everything to Disney and then turn around and then, give up his creative control. He should have known what was coming. And he should have known that there would always be a market for Star Wars. He could have gone around and pitched Star Wars to any film production company and they would jump on it. So to me, he was more in the driver's seat in terms of bargaining than Disney was. The problem is, do you want to say he got greedy and he couldn't turn down all the money? Okay, well, that's fine, maybe. Probably is. But when you consider how much work he's put into this over the years, to just give up your creative control, to me, is a little bit insane. And, I don't blame him for being disappointed. I'm sure he obviously had a separate vision. But, again, he didn't have to sell it. Now, I'm pretty surprised that Bob Iger even released this. This only gives more confirmation to a lot of fans out there who have not liked the direction the series has gone in, knowing that the God King of Star Wars is not on board with what Disney is doing as well. But I don't think we should let George Lucas off the hook here. Me personally, I wouldn't. I think that he should have never have given up, at least never have given up creative control. I don't have a problem with him selling it's his work. If he wants to sell it, sell it. But you shouldn't give up creative control. If you know this company is going to do more movies, if they're going to make more movies, why would you give up creative control? That would, to me, you're giving the power to another company to change some of the things that you've worked years implementing. I mean, they even went as far as to make a lot of the novels and story elements outside of the main movies, even as far as even in video games, they went out of their way to make those non-canonical. So, I mean, Disney has really stripped down Star Wars and kind of made it focused on whatever stories they tell. And I don't feel sorry for George Lucas. You willingly gave this up. Now you're seeing your beloved story being torn to shreds. You don't like what you're seeing. A lot of the fans don't like what they're seeing. And it's too late even if Disney wanted to walk it back now. You're already 2 movies into this last trilogy. They'd have to pull a miracle out of their ass to save this. And quite frankly, I don't see it. I've looked at several of these leaks, and there's a couple of people who think one particular leak holds true. And we'll see when the movie comes out. But if any of those leaks are true, this movie is going to be a disaster. And, doesn't matter what kind of book Bob Iger writes. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters at this point. You know what I mean? One of the things George also said when having a meeting with Kathleen Kennedy and during the first viewing is that he was upset that they didn't introduce new worlds, new characters, and things of that nature, new technologies, which that last one's actually a good point. New technologies. You look back at some of the prequel trilogy, and some of those ships actually look more advanced than some of the ones you see later, which is kind of funny. But of course, that's special effects. And even some of the devs they took from him, they just killed. They killed it. So interesting stuff. What do you think about this? I personally, I'm not taking the side of George Lucas here. I'm not. I blame him just as much. I blame Disney for screwing everything up, and I blame George Lucas for giving up creative control. And I'm not saying George Lucas would have been the end-all, be-all savior of this, because he's proven to be not so good at telling some of his own stories. But I think they would have at least been in better hands had George Lucas had some creative control than they are now. And very interesting stuff. It's gonna be interesting to see how Star Wars goes forward. Even after this last episode coming out. So let me know in the comment section what you think about this whole situation. Are you taking sides here, or do you think they're both just as much to blame? I think they're both just as much to blame. I don't think George Lucas should be let off the hook here. He's the one that sold this to Disney. He's the one that took the big payday, and he's the one that gave up creative control. And you give up creative control to any company, you should expect them to do what they want to do, not what you suggest. And it's not a surprise here. So let me know in the comments what you think about this whole situation. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Also, like and share this video, as it helps the channel a great deal. And until next video, this is Rob signing off for E.T.N, where we don't do news, we just talk entertainment. Take it easy.